Hello there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we are taking a look at some modern SUVs, and we kick things off with the 2009 Audi Q7 V12 TDI, 494 horsepower, 737 foot-pound torque, 5,743 pounds of weight. This is the torquiest car here today. Holy mother of torque, the Q7 has got a lot of it. The Q7 might possibly be one of my favourite diesel cars of all time because it's completely stupid. A V12 TDI engine which gets about 3 miles to the gallon. It doesn't make any sense at all, but that's sort of the reason I love it. I mean, it's got a lot of torque, but then again you can make a lot of torque with turbos and so on and so forth. Anyways, as far as the Q7 goes to drive, honestly, it is like driving a bus. It is very, very tall. It is very, very heavy. It is not a handling vehicle in the slightest. Of course, you've got four-wheel drive, which means realistically you'll never spin off the track backwards, but you might sort of go off the track forwards with a lot of understeer. It doesn't have too much understeer, to be fair. It's one of those cars where you do have to really prepare yourself to drive it, because it's not like driving a car. You do feel like you are driving, well, a bus, basically, but once you've sort of got the hang of it, it isn't the worst thing in the world to drive. I've certainly driven cars worse than the Q7, but yeah, it certainly ain't no sport car despite that V12 TDI engine. The only thing I can lead to think is, well, it's a shame they never put that engine in the Audi R8 like they were originally going to. Anyways, next up we have the 2011 BMW X5M, 547 horsepower, 501 foot-pound torque, 5,368 pounds of weight. This is a pretty interesting one. This is sort of a returning legend to the track, if you will. Previously, the X5M has gone around the Top Gear track a couple of times, and every time it has, I've always come away thinking how nice of a vehicle it is to drive. The way I've always described it in the past is it's basically like driving a Subaru Impreza. It's a little bit understeery. It's not the quickest thing in the world, but it's got decent enough traction, and it is a very good sort of platform to do things off, although maybe not quite as good as the Impreza in terms of that platform thing. I do have to admit, when driving this car in this game, it's not as good as it used to be. It does have a little bit more body roll than it did before. The turning isn't quite as crisp. It does feel a little bit heavier than it did previously. It's just not quite up there with what it used to be. It is still decent enough for what it is. It's certainly better than you'd ever expect it to be, and while I haven't driven the X6M in this game, I can assume it's better than the X6 because the X6 in FM6 was terrible. But yeah, unfortunately just not quite the handling beast it used to be. Usually this was the SUV I would absolutely recommend to people, but you know, nowadays I just can't really do that. There are better options out there. Next up, the 2012 Range Rover Supercharged, 503 horsepower, 461 foot-pound torque, 6,195 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest vehicle here today, which actually surprised me. I was expecting the Q7 to be the heaviest, but the Q7 is actually almost 500 pounds lighter, which is interesting. This thing is the heaviest by a long way, because after that, yeah, it's about 1,000 pounds heavier than anything else here today. The Range Rover is a big, heavy vehicle, especially this sort of last-gen Range Rover. This was before they were making them out of aluminium. I do quite like this model of Range Rover. It's sort of, when someone says Range Rover, this is the Range Rover I think of. It's sort of big, tall, boxy. Of course, it's supposed to be the ultimate off-roader and so on and so forth, and the supercharged engine is pretty cool. As far as it goes to drive, it is woeful. This is the worst driving vehicle here today. This is quite possibly one of the worst driving cars I've taken around this track in this game so far. It is extremely top-heavy. Like, I mean, you could probably gather that by the way sort of the dimensions are of it, how tall it is, but unlike every other SUV here today, which sort of compromises for it, or has some compensation for it, this literally feels like it's going to roll over through every corner. It is insane how much this thing, it feels like it's going to roll, and the traction's awful. You can sort of see coming through the second to last corner there. That's, yeah, with me slowing down in time, it's just so much understeer, so much body roll, so much top heaviness. Do not drive the Range Rover. Next up, 2015 Porsche Macan Turbo, 400 horsepower, 406 foot-pound torque, 4,244 pounds of weight. This car is tied for the least power here today. It has the least torque here today, however it is the lightest. So basically this is the Lotus of the SUV world. Of course I say that, the Macan is by far and away the smallest car here today. well, this and something else you'll see later on are basically, I guess some people could call them crossovers. I'd still say they're sort of medium-sized proper SUVs, because I don't believe they come with anything other than four-wheel drive. But yeah, the Macan is certainly smaller than anything else here today. I do quite like the Macan, certainly prefer it to the Cayenne. I think it's actually a pretty good looking car, all in all. And I sort of think of it as the closest thing we'll ever get to a Porsche hot hatch, so that's one way to think of the Macan. As far as it goes to drive, the Macan is very good for an SUV. It's actually, yeah, a really solid driving car. Turning's pretty good. You still do feel the weight in it a little bit. Again, no matter what you do, it's still a £4,200 car, and unless you're a Lamborghini Aventador, not really much you can do there. But it is, yeah, surprisingly decent in terms of its driving capabilities. And if you're looking for an SUV, I would probably recommend you try out the Macan, because yeah, it is a solid vehicle. Next up, we have the 2016 Bentley Ben Tiger, 599 horsepower, 663 foot-pound torque, 5,340 pounds of weight. I'm sort of getting my mind blown by the fact that this thing's almost 1,000 pounds lighter than that Range Rover, despite being a Bentley Ben Tiger. Yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, a controversial opinion, I really like the Ben Tiger, to be honest with you. Yes, it is ostentatious, yes, it is stupid, it's a W12 equipped SUV, but I actually quite like the way it looks. I didn't really before, and then I drove this thing in Forza Horizon 3, bought it in this colour, and in this colour, I think the Ben Tiger looks absolutely fantastic, one of the best looking modern SUVs, but I know I'll probably get shot for saying that. Yeah, I know not a lot of people like the Ben Tiger, but personally, I do. However, if you didn't like the Ben Tiger, and you've gone to drive it in Forza Motorsport 7, wondering whether you'll like it or not, I can safely confirm to you that you will not like it any more than you did previously. It is, well, the best way to describe it is it's very soft, very heavy, but it is very fast. It is extremely fast in a straight line, one of the fastest cars here today in terms of its acceleration and so on and so forth. But the amount of lean and body roll in this thing, it's hilarious how much it body rolls. It's by far and away the softest car here today. It's even softer than the Range Rover, at least in terms of its feel. It's not as bad to drive as the Range Rover, but it is very soft indeed. Yeah, the Ben Tiger it's one that I'd find hard to really recommend, to be honest with you. Next up, the 2017 Volvo XC90 T8R design, 400 horsepower, 472 foot-pound torque, 5,105 pounds of weight. This, again, least powerful car here today, tied with the Macan. The Volvo XC90 is pretty interesting. You see, we've had a diesel car and the rest of these are petrol, but this is a petrol-electric hybrid. This car, in case you don't know, is actually crazy. It has a 2-litre 4-cylinder, which is supercharged and turbocharged, and then a hybrid as well. It is crazy, sort of how much weird technology there is going in this thing. I love a twin charge, and you know, as far as hybrid motors go, 400 horsepower from a 2-litre sounds absolutely fantastic to me. If I was buying a hybrid and I had an infinite budget, this is what I'd buy. As far as it goes to drive in the game, it is nice to drive. Of course, by far and away, it is the least PI in a car here today. I believe it's the only D-Class car, and yeah, I think a few of these are C-Class, but for the most part they're sort of B-Class. This is a D, which does mean, yeah, it's not fast, it is a little bit on the slow end, but I can't complain about the way it drives. It is so nice to drive, and ultimately that's what might make it quicker than, you know, some of the bigger C-Class vehicles, because it's nice to drive. There's barely any body roll in it, it gets turned in nicely. It's a good car, and there's no real sort of disagreeing on that one. Next up, the 2017 Maserati Levante SQ4, 424 horsepower, 427 foot-pound torque, 4,649 pounds of weight. When I was speaking about the Macan-sized vehicle earlier, this is what I was referring to. Again, another car which you could technically say is maybe a crossover. Yeah, the Maserati Levante. Okay, this is by far and away the most recent car added to this game. This came in with a DLC not long ago. Again, sort of similar to the Bentley, I actually kind of like the Levante. I think in white it actually looks really nice. It does look a little bit like a Hyundai Santa Fe from the back, and from the front I'm not quite sure what they're going for, but it isn't a terrible looking car, and it's a, you know, the engine's cool. It's a twin-turbo V6, I believe, so that's cool. As far as it goes to drive, honestly, this drives like a better Macan. It is that good. I said the Macan is a very good SUV, one of the best, one of the ones that I'd recommend, but over the Macan, I would actually recommend the Levante. It is quicker, it has better handling, it has less body roll, it's more composed, it's just better. You know, the Macan might look slightly better, that looks so subjective, but if you want an overall good performing SUV, the Levante is the one to go for. It really is something truly sensational, probably one of the best driving Maseratis in the game as well, because it certainly drives better than the Gran Turismo. That's something you didn't expect to hear today. Anyways, finally, we have the 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, 707 horsepower, 645 foot-pounds torque, 5,350 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today, obviously. It is the mighty Trackhawk. This is, for those of you who don't know, a Jeep Grand Cherokee with the Hellcat engine in it. And yeah, that's quite a crazy thing. That seems to be Chrysler's sort of approach to cars these days. Let's stick the Hellcat engine in it and hope it will improve it. In the case of the Cherokee, it certainly has moved it up market into a performance SUV. Of course, we have the SLT version, but you know, the SLT version's got nothing on the Trackhawk. As far as it goes to drive, well, unsurprisingly, it is stupid fast. One of the fastest accelerating cars I've driven in a long time. The Cherokee probably can rival some supercars in terms of its launching credibility. It is that fast, and the gearbox is super close ratio, which really helps with that. It's actually surprisingly good to drive as well. I was sort of looking at the Grand Cherokee and I was like, this is basically going to handle like the Range Rover with 200 more horsepower, but surprisingly, it is actually relatively composed. It's a pretty hardcore suspension, which helps it. It gets through corners nicely, turning's good, body roll barely any. You can feel the weight, but you can in every single car here today, so overall the Cherokee not too terrible. On to the times then, and unsurprisingly considering it was the highest PI car here today, in 70th place we find the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk with a 122.287. Admittedly it is an A-class vehicle, that's sort of sharing the place with B-class vehicles, but look at it this way, the Challenger Hellcat's only about 0.2 of a second quicker, and to be honest with you, the Cherokee is nicer to drive in my opinion. In 87th place we find the Maserati Levante with a 124.554, not too far off a Nissan Skyline. That probably would have irritated people if it beat it. Yeah, a really solid performance from the Levante, and quite rightly so because it is a truly rather great handling vehicle. Moving down, we find three cars now. In 96th place, we find the Bentley Ben Tiger with 125.172 on account of its very, very soft suspension. If it had harder suspension, it probably could have been up there with the Levante. In 101st place, we find the BMW X5M with a 125.659. Interestingly enough, it's slightly slower than the ML63 that we had out last episode. So yeah, despite the fact that the X5 was slightly better driving than that, the ML is a bit quicker. And in 102nd place, we find the Porsche Macan Turbo 125.742, slightly beating out a 22-beat Impreza, which is pretty apt considering, yeah, the Macan not too far off the handling characteristics of a Subaru, personally. At least that's what I felt from it. Moving down again, in 151st place, the Volvo XC90 T8R design with a 128.608 beats out the Dodge Neon, which is a car which is 20 PI above. I believe that was the only car here today to really overgrow its PI number, which is fantastic. In 137th place, we find the Range Rover Supercharged with 129.219, a truly terrible vehicle. That time is very much deserved. And in 140th place, the Audi Q7 V12 TDI with a 129.431. As much as I love the Q7, it handles like a bus. The Range Rover handles no. And the Volvo, yeah, is truly probably the star of all the cars here today. You know, I thought that time was really good, and the Trackhawk as well, almost being able to beat the Challenger Hellcat is super impressive. But for SUVs, you know, obviously you'd expect them not to be quite as quick as sports cars and so on, but they actually did reasonably well. Anyways, friends, I want to thank you all very much for watching this edition of Forza Top Gear Laps. Next time, we are going to be taking a look at, well, not SUVs. Instead, we're going to be starting a look at hot hatches with, of course, retro hot hatches. Join me for that. Until then, farewell.